Because if we neglect our spiritual growth, we will continue to feel disconnected. We'll continue to feel unfulfilled. We'll continue to feel unhappy. We're going to continue to have that empty feeling like we have no purpose, feeling like we're just wandering through life with no purpose. All these things, they start to affect your mental health and your mental well-being and all those things. Without having some spiritual growth, you don't have a spiritual connection. Without a spiritual connection, navigating the challenges of life, and so all of your experiences, everything that you experience is even a greater challenge. It's one thing to have problems, but it's another thing to experience those problems on a greater, bigger scale. Sometimes we feel like something is missing in our lives. Like we're not as happy as we think we should be, or we're not fulfilled as we could be. We might even feel disconnected or just feel lost. And other people look at you and it seems like that everything is fine on the surface. I mean, you look good, you look the same, and other people look at you and they can't tell that something is missing within your life. But you know that something is off. You know something is missing. You know you're not fulfilled. You know that that you just have this hole, right? And what happens is that this feeling that you have, it comes from one thing. It comes from neglecting spiritual growth. That's what I believe it comes from. And so the solution to this problem is growing in our spiritual growth. That's the solution. And so to bridge the gap between feeling lost and feeling that you don't have fulfillment in your life is to bridge that gap. We need to make time for practices that nourish our spiritual growth. Because if we neglect our spiritual growth, we will continue to feel disconnected. We'll continue to feel unfulfilled. We'll continue to feel unhappy. And we might struggle with, we're going to continue to have that empty feeling like we have no purpose, feeling like we're just wandering through life with no purpose, right? And all these things, they start to affect your mental health and your mental well-being and all those things. And so what I'm saying is, without growing in your spiritual growth, without having some spiritual growth, you don't have a spiritual connection. Without a spiritual connection, navigating the challenges of life, and you don't have any meaning in life. And so all of your experiences, everything that you experience is even a greater challenge. Like, it's one thing to have problems, but it's another thing to experience those problems on a greater, bigger scale. And that's because you lack the spiritual maturity. You lack the spiritual growth that your body was designed to go through. You were designed to grow spiritually. You were not designed to just get at a certain level of spiritual growth. You are to continue to grow. The Bible says that he that had began a good work in you shall continue it until the day of Jesus Christ. That means everything in your life, all of the areas of your life, you're supposed to continue to grow. And definitely spiritually, you're supposed to continue to grow spiritually each and every day. There is no such thing as reaching a spiritual level to where you don't have to grow anymore. And then, on the other hand, when we prioritize our spiritual growth, we open ourselves up to the possibility of experiencing a greater, more fulfilling life. We experience greater peace. We experience joy. We experience contentment in our lives. And then even our relationship with other people are deeper and richer. And we find it easier to navigate the challenges in life. We have more resilience. We have more grace. And so it is important that you invest in your spiritual growth, because that will lead to a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Hey, I just wanted to interrupt this video for a moment to tell you about the importance of having a morning routine. This is why it's so important. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel like that your mornings are chaotic and rushed, and it leaves you feeling stressed and unprepared for the day? Are you tired of stumbling through your mornings feeling disorganized and overwhelmed? Does a lack of a structured routine leave you scrambling to find focus and to balance your day? The absence of a morning routine can leave us playing catch up for the rest of the day. leading to decreased productivity and lower energy levels. Well, it's time to transform your mornings and take control over your day with Master Your Morning. See, Master Your Morning is a free resource that I created. This is a guide to creating a morning routine that sets up the foundation of your day for success. Master Your Mornings. This is your solution to chaotic mornings. This is your solution to creating a morning routine that sets the foundation for your day. If you're ready to experience a purposeful start to your day, download this free resource. There's a link in the description below this video where you can download that free resource. Sign up now and unlock the power of your mornings. Now, Jesus modeled for us two types of spiritual disciplines that you need to experience spiritual growth. Two types of spiritual disciplines that you're going to have to do. The first one is personal. You're going to have a personal spiritual discipline. This is you doing it all by yourself. And then the second one is a corporate spiritual discipline. This is where you do, when you practice a spiritual discipline with other people. And so Jesus shows us so let's talk about the first one. Jesus shows us that some spiritual disciplines are done by yourself. Now today's focus is on spiritual growth. And I've been talking about, in the past couple of videos, I've been talking about Luke 2:52. In Luke 2:52, it says that Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and man. And I did videos on talking about the other things. I did videos talking about Jesus growing in wisdom. I did a video with Jesus talking about Jesus growing in stature. Now this video is about Jesus growing in favor with God the Father. Okay. Now this is all about Jesus growing in favor with God. Let's go to Mark 1:35. In Mark 1:35, it says, before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went to an isolated place to pray. Now, let's talk about this. Let's break this down, because what Jesus did is Jesus prioritized spending time alone with God. He prioritized it. And the reason why he prioritized it because he did it the first thing in the morning, like the very first thing. The very first thing that Jesus did, he went out and he went to a place that got by himself to pray. So he demonstrated the personal spiritual disciplines of praying. And there's other personal spiritual disciplines. There's praying, there's fasting, there's meditation, there's just getting by yourself. And so, but the thing that I don't want you to miss is it says before daybreak. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Now, think about that. Now, I know people like I'm big on morning routines. I'm big on morning routines, having a morning ritual, something you do every morning. I'm big on that. And that's when I do my devotion. Now, I know some people like to say, I can do my devotion at any time. That's true. You can do your devotion at night or in the middle of the day or whatever you want to do. That's if you remember to do it. But if we're following the model and the example of Jesus, it says Jesus before daybreak the next morning got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. So Jesus did it before daybreak. Now, what's special about before daybreak? The only thing it's not that because it's just so early. That's not the point. The point is that's the first thing he did. He prioritized that above everything else. And that's why I believe a morning routine is so important. And doing your devotion in the morning is so important because you are making it known to God that you believe that he is the most important thing in your life. You believe you are prioritizing God in your life because you're doing it the first thing. You're doing it before daybreak. And whether you do it before daybreak or when the sun comes up, that's not the point. Before daybreak just ensures that nothing else is going on. That's when I like to do my devotion, because if you do it, the later you wait to do it, then the rest of the world is up. And the rest of the world is up, and then there's people emailing you and calling you and all those things. And so that's why it's so important to do it the very first thing. And if you can get up early, get up early. Get up early as you can. Get up. I'll say that. Get up as early as you can get up. Get up as early as you can before all the other things in your life start to get to happen. If you got kids, get up before your kids get up so that you can have this alone time with God to where you can, that's why it's called devotion, because you're devoting this time to him. You're telling him that he's important. You're telling him that he is the number one priority in your life. It says Jesus got up and he got up early and went and prayed. Now, in this particular context, this was Jesus the night before. Jesus had a busy evening. He had a busy evening of healing people and casting out demons out of people and doing all those things. That's what he did the night before. And so he got up early the next morning because he wanted to replenish his soul. He wanted to replenish his spirit. And so that's why he went out and prayed to the Father so he can replenish himself. The point of that is sometimes a lot of us, we pour out so much of ourselves in doing the things that we do every day. We pour so much out. And when you pour so much out of yourself, you need to be refilled because eventually you're going to run out. And so at some point you got to fill your own cup before you can help others. And the one way to do that is early in the morning, reaching out to God and being filled back up in your time alone with God and your devotion to God. And then, okay, so here's the next thing. The next thing Jesus also, I told you there was two types of spiritual disciplines. The next one is the spiritual discipline that you do with others, corporate spiritual disciplines. Okay, let's talk about corporate spiritual disciplines now. Corporate spiritual disciplines are when you do your spiritual disciplines with other people. And Jesus also gives us an example. Jesus also is the example of that. In Luke 4:16, it says, when he came to the village of Nazareth, he is Jesus, talking about Jesus here. When he came to the village of Nazareth, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and he stood up to read the scriptures. Now it says that Jesus went as usual. That means he did it all the time. It means he consistently went to the synagogue. Now, what does that mean? That means consistently going to church. That's basically what that means. For you and I today, what that means is if we're going to follow the example of Jesus, we have to, as usual, consistently, on a consistent basis, go to church. That's basically what that means. And that's why it says in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25, it says, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Now, what is that saying? It says, let us not, okay, this says that when it says, let us think of ways to motivate each other to acts of love and good works. Okay, so how do you motivate each other to acts of love and good works? Or when do you do it? It's saying that you do it when you meet together. Now, where do Christians, now you can meet anywhere, but where do Christians meet? And what they're talking about is going to church here. We meet together at church. We meet together in a corporate setting, right? Since we are the church, when we meet together, we have church. But this is talking about meeting together in a corporate setting in church. And it says, let us not neglect meeting together, because when we meet together, we are supposed to think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And so some verses, some translations say, let's consider one another. Let's consider one another. And when we consider one another, we have our mind fixed on one another. We think about one another. We contemplate and consider one another. And we contemplate and we consider one another so that we can help each other, so that we can counsel each other. And the reason why we do that is because that we are motivating each other to acts of love and good works. That's what that means. And you can't do that. You can't motivate each other if you don't come together. Because what this is saying is there's strength in unity. There's strength in unity. And when you continue to assemble yourselves, when you continue to get together, it produces and fosters love and good works. And it gives us an opportunity to provoke each other to good works because we encourage each other. Now, the next part of that verse, it says that Let us not neglect meeting together, but let's encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Now, let us encourage each other because we are getting closer to the time that Jesus is coming back. Now, what that means is we need to continue. We're living in the last days, so we need to continue to encourage each other. We need to continue to encourage each other. Some people have it twisted. Some people think that the whole purpose is going to church is for what you can get out of it. That's not the entire purpose for going to church. Now, that's a result of going to church is that you're going to get something out of it, that you're going to get, you're going to, like I was saying, this is a spiritual discipline. So you're going to get, poured into you. But the other part of that is the reason you go to church is to encourage others. Some people you don't know how some people are feeling. And when they come to church and see you, it gives them hope. It gives them encouragement to continue on. Because some people, you don't know, they might have been on the verge of giving up. But when they come and see you and you give them strength and you give them encouragement. So that is one of the purposes of going to church, is so that we can encourage each other. It's not all about you. And so you may think, well, I'm good. I'm prayed up. I read my Bible. I'm good. And you may be good. And that's fine. You may be good now because it don't last forever. You may be good now. You may be in a good season right now. But okay, if you are good, if you are in a good season, that means you are shining bright. So won't you go to church and let other people see that light shine, and that way they can be encouraged by watching you. It builds their faith to see you, right? And so that's why it says that let us consider one another and let us get together and meet together so that we can continue to encourage each other. Continue to encourage each other and continue to help each other in our spiritual growth. And the last verse I'll give you is 1 Timothy 4:7. It says, discipline yourself for the purposes of godliness. Discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. We're talking about spiritual disciplines here and growing in our spiritual growth. The New Living Translation says, train yourself to be godly. Train yourself to be godly. And that's how we grow in our spiritual disciplines. We grow that's how we grow in our spiritual growth. We grow by training ourselves and disciplining ourselves for the purpose of godliness. Now, spiritual growth is the result of practicing spiritual disciplines. You're not going to grow spiritually if you don't practice. Just like any other area in your life, you don't grow unless you practice. You don't become a better basketball shooter, Steph Curry, if you don't practice. You don't become better at anything if you don't practice. So, and there's no different in your spiritual growth. You have to practice, and you have to practice spiritual disciplines like praying and reading your scriptures and going to church and all those things. And so to experience spiritual growth in our relationship with God, we have to incorporate these spiritual disciplines in our life. And I gave you two: personal spiritual disciplines and corporate spiritual disciplines. And these are some disciplines that we can start today.